Hey guys, and welcome back to another video. So we are going to be doing, I was gonna say a couple of spreads today, but not exactly. So I have this page as well as this page that have alcohol marker bleed through, but I don't feel like I want to do anything like gouache painting, acrylic marker painting, or even using sticker paper right now to cover up those kinds of bleed through to draw on. So today we are going to be using something that I used to do before I had some, I guess, like materials that I could use to cover up the bleed through. So we're going to be using a sticky note. I also have this kind of, I guess it's called the dot liner, and it's basically just double-sided adhesive tape. And I like using this to kind of just help adhere my sticky notes a little bit more evenly, as well as I don't really want it to accidentally peel up while I'm drawing. And how a sticky note obviously works is the fact that there is only one side that has the kind of like removable adhesive in a way. So I'm only going to really add it to mostly the bottom portion that's like on the opposite side of where the adhesive already is, so that while I'm drawing back and forth, hopefully I won't be accidentally lifting up the sticky note over and over again. So I did end up filming this video kind of out of order, but I am showing you guys what I am technically going to be referring to as like my main inspo for today. So as a lot of you guys already know, I am a big fan of Dan Heng Permanent Terre, specifically that form. I do like the other Dan Hengs and I've drawn them several times in the past as well, but this one in particular is my favorite. So actually, let me talk about the materials, and then once we get into the sketching portion, we'll get into all the nitty-gritty details. So today, I'm going to be using the High-Tech C Coletto multi-pen, which has my colored lead in it. I'm going to be using the kind of like mid-tone blue that I like to use mostly for sketching, and then I'm going to pair it up with one of the ballpoint pens, which you saw earlier. So one of the ballpoint pens, which I like to use for sketching in general, which is the Pentel RSVP pen, and then the other ballpoint pen is the Papermate Inkjoy. And I have two versions of it because I know I have an Inkjoy pen that is out of ink. I just don't really remember which one. And for some reason, the barrels on the ink cartridges are a little bit misleading because they appear all white. So I can't really see how much ink is actually in the reservoir. But kind of like starting off with this bleed through page. So on the back side, I think it was from the session where I drew Hiro from Ensemble Stars. So Amagi Hiro for his birthday. And okay, so how am I going to preface this? I think I said that I ended up filming this video probably a week in advance. So there is going to be another video coming out that I'm doing the voiceover technically after that video has been recorded. So I do apologize if you're going to hear like overlapped information in a very weird order. But because I have these filmed like out of order, you're going to see me with nails, like painted nails, sometimes and then sometimes not. As I'm recording the audio for this, I actually took off my gel nails because I use a peel off base coat, and part of it is because like the top part, maybe it's because I used the peel off base coat, that it's kind of lifting a lot, so it keeps getting caught whenever I like tie my hair, brush my hair, or just like whenever I'm touching clothing and stuff, it kind of gets caught. So I decided to take them off because I had like a significant amount of growth only in a week. I don't know if this is too much, so I'll put it on the screen if you're interested. If this is actually fast for like nail growth in 1 week. I'm pretty sure that I painted my gel nails right up to my cuticle. I didn't really push back my cuticle too much, so maybe that's the issue, but it just seems like there was like a lot of growth and a lot of my natural nail was showing, so I decided to just take them off. So if you see that, that's the kind of be indication of when I recorded certain videos and when I recorded, I guess the more current videos right now, because I don't have my nails currently. But back to the subject of who we were drawing. So we are going to be drawing, or I am drawing, the Permanent Terre version of Dan Heng, but not in his regular outfit. So early on in the video, and later on this week, you're going to see again, the inspiration of this outfit is based on a post that I saw where, I don't know if it's like a project or something. It's not posted by the official Genshin thing, but I'm pretty sure it's like some sort of official event type of thing that's like a project that some artists are doing, which I found very cool. So I decided to, you know, read up a little bit on it. So they had like little profiles of some of the Star Rail characters, and one of them was like Stell and Kalis, or like the Trailblazers, and they're like the CEOs, and they're like holding events or like scouting or something like in a park or for a park. And then there's Dan Heng, who is a undercover idol, and then he performs as an idol as the Dan Heng Permancer Terre form, which I find very cute. So obviously, as somebody who really likes Dan Heng in general, as well as kind of like the idol aesthetic and just like idol culture in a sense, I wanted to make Dan Heng kind of a idol outfit. Now, I'm specifically referring to idol outfits that are more towards like Japanese idol, which kind of has like a princely kind of look typically for their stuff. I reference a lot to like Ensemble Stars outfit, and I feel like those outfits kind of lean towards like almost formal-ish kind of attire. Sometimes they go a little bit more into like street fashion or like techno, that kind of stuff, or go very themed. So like I think Rabbits has one where they're very kind of like sailor suit outfit kind of what am I saying? Like an aesthetic. And then there's even like promotions where some of the members from different groups come together and then they're dressed as like rabbits, like actual bunnies for Easter, that kind of stuff. So that's what I mean by themed. So the reason why I'm saying I'm leaning towards mostly like the Japanese idol aesthetic is that I think nowadays, for K-pop at least, I don't see many that do like actual concepts where the whole aesthetic or the get up and the look up for everything for a comeback or promotion is based off of a theme. Most of it's just like very cool, very innocent looking, or like it's more very general, but it's very normal looking. Like some of the outfits like you could totally just wear as like a normal outfit out in real life, kind of just on the streets, but it might be a little bit out there, but they're not really like themed. Hopefully that kind of makes sense. J-idol and like K-pop idol, it's a little bit different of like idol culture in a sense, right? There is a little bit of a discrepancy, but the outfits that I really like are leaning more towards like princely outfits or formal outfits is my favorite to do for like idol looks. So whenever I did ones for Genshin characters for both Swirl, I think? Oh, no, Breeze. So the 6 animal boys, as well as the Aggravate kind of made up unit. My brain's like running on very low sleep right now. But that was also more towards slightly kind of, I don't really know aesthetics like by name, but it's more darker concept. And I did look up more of like K-pop because whenever K-pop idols do more like, I guess like leather jackets, some mesh. There's like, I don't know, there is like a specific like overall aesthetic, but not a theme. Like this is kind of like what I'm drilling into you guys right now, saying that concept versus like a theme or like a themed aesthetic. There's like a difference, I guess. So some of the outfits I did refer to K-pop idols when I wanted to look up like just general aesthetics for like, oh, I wanted like a very cool jacket. I wanted to pair up certain type of clothing or like all that stuff. So I did mostly that kind of look for Aggravate. So for those, I found it very more like helpful in that sense. And then for Breeze, I found it more helpful to look at J-idol stuff, which I based Dan Heng's outfit on as well. So for the cover up portion for this page, which I finished up, I ended up just doing a sketch kind of with the blue lead and then going over with the ballpoint pens to kind of like darken up and shade. Now, my thing about using sticky notes mostly for cover up, they're really nice, especially if you do end up having just like maybe a few areas that have very concentrated bleed through. I just like knocking it out with a sticky note or two because I just don't want that prominent shape to be as noticeable. So for here, at least for covering up the light blue kind of bleed through, I am putting it mostly where the face was and then kind of an area that had a little bit more bleed through, so we just have this kind of overlapping diagonal pattern. And before we jump into the actual drawing portion for this page at least, I ended up switching the kneaded eraser that's on the end of my pencil. I went ahead and grabbed the old kind of more used up one, put it into my somewhat cleaner kneaded eraser, kind of melded it back in, and then took another chunk to put it at the very end. So instead of using the blue colored lead for this sketch, I decided to go the pencil route. I was trying to see whether or not I could just do the sketch and pencil entirely, but I think this one will also require some ink. So the kind of idea for when I'm blocking in stuff or wanting to use kind of like these sticky notes to do cover-ups is that I like having bolder looks or color or lines or whatever you want. So in this case, I'll be talking about the inking to kind of stand out from these brightly colored sticky notes. Now, if I can, I like to contain the face right into like the actual center of the sticky note. But because I'm drawing Dan Heng a lot larger for this one, I didn't really mind if it kind of cuts out of kind of like the sticky note area into where the bleed through area is, because the bleed through for this one is still fairly light for the most part. So as long as I add black afterwards, it's not going to be too bad. There's enough contrast there that it doesn't really make it too hard for me to decipher a face. Also, I recommend like even if you don't have mediums that might stand out on top of the sticky note, I find like even just having sticky notes lying around and doodling on them and then eventually pasting them in your sketchbook is a good way if you want to use up a page that you don't feel compelled to draw on top of, or just sketch and just fill up the page regardless if there's bleed through. There's always like that option as well. I just like adding like the pops of color because it's kind of fun looking at the kind of squares or whatever shape you end up with alongside with some sort of like dark contrasted color. So I will be using black once again. But I kind of wished that instead of using ballpoint pen for at least this part or for this page, I kind of wish I used the Energel pen, so like a gel pen, because it has that really dark rich color and it really does pop, especially when I use this kind of like neon yellowy type of sticky note. And that's what I've done in the past. I had a like very beloved kind of dark blue gel pen and it dispensed like a heck of a lot of ink. I'm pretty sure it was like some sort of either Energel-ish or Pentel. I don't really remember which brand it was leaning into, but it kind of had more of like a liquidy kind of conical tip, I believe. Not a conical tip, actually a needlepoint tip, and it dispensed more of like a liquidy ink, so it dried really quickly. You could get like nice solid areas. I still have like the brand type somewhere in my room because I have a red version that it's not like my favorite because the blue and the black one were always my favorite to use, but because they were my favorite, I used them up quite a bit. But unfortunately, regardless if I knew the brand name or had the name of the pen anymore, I can't really get it anymore because it's discontinued, which is very unfortunate. But I'm pretty sure there's like other brands or the same brand has a very similar kind of like ink formula for that specific pen, which I could look into. But for now, I think the Energel Klena alongside with the compatible inks that I use for it is actually like a very good dupe for what I'm looking for. So I could have used it here, but instead I went back to the Pentel RSVP and then using probably one of the Papermate Inkjoy pens to help darken up certain areas. And the reason why I'm using two different ballpoint pens is actually because the Pentel RSVP is my favorite ballpoint pen for sketching and doodling because it behaves very, very similarly to a mechanical pencil, but still has properties of a ballpoint pen. So like obviously you can't erase, but if you take your time and you really build up value, you can get really nice kind of like dark areas. So I do like using it for like outlining, shading, all of that, or going over my pencil lines at time if I just want a little bit more of that contrast. But it does require me to put a lot more effort to get areas very, very dark. One, because the ink is a little bit more thinner in a way, so it becomes a little bit more like scratchy, which is really great when it comes to like actually building up value and wanting to have like light areas, because this pen doesn't really add any like ink splotches or anything. I never had a problem with its consistency, but the Papermate Inkjoy does have a little bit of a tendency to dispense a little bit more ink, which is great to pair up with this pen because I can use it to really fill in more solid areas if I need, or I want that really punchy dark black to come out, then I will definitely use it. Even right now I'm using the oh no, I switched. I kind of go back and forth, I guess, but there are some areas that I do end up using the Papermate Inkjoy pen to just darken up some areas. Oftentimes, because I'm doing like just very minimal sketching, I'm just gonna stick with the Pentel RSVP throughout the entire drawing. It's just like if I kind of like screw something up or I feel like something just needs that extra push, then I'll pull out that pen instead, and we can have like that difference in contrast, because there is like an actual visual difference as well as just like using the medium. I find that there's a difference. I do require a little bit more pressure when using the Pentel RSVP versus using the Papermate Inkjoy. So, you know, to each their own. You might have your preference on which kind of tool that you like to use for drawing. But I do like using ballpoint pen to just like spruce up a drawing every so often, especially if I'm using graphite. But this little page is also finished, so you can see the 2 pages that I ended up kind of like covering up with sticky notes for the bleed through. The one on the right here, I ended up doing, I forget when exactly, but I ended up just not like drawing anything else on that left hand side. So to finish off today's session and the rest of today's video, we are going to be focusing on our kind of like last spread for the set of drawings, because my brain is like so Dan Heng Permancer Terre idol pilled right now that I just want to continuously draw it. And like I mentioned, there is a video coming out later this week that I will be talking about it a little more, and probably even one more video maybe next week, depending on when I have time to plan that one out. I want to do a sketch page full color of Dan Heng PT, but I want to do it more like a sketch to finish. But I've been in this weird area of working on that Columbina drawing, and I was supposed to make that one a sketch to finish, but I ended up kind of going back and forth and like really disliking the drawing and then liking it again, disliking it, and then trying to fix it and then settling. So I ended up just changing that to an ASMR video instead of a start to finish, because it was a lot of headache of going back and forth, recording audio, not recording audio, that kind of stuff. So there's just too many inconsistencies. But I don't think I've done a start to finish video for a sketch page, and I think those ones are fun because we get to do multiple drawings all together. But I'm kind of debating, because there's also the fact that I want to also draw, I think his name is Ilua, not Iluga. It's like the new Genshin boy in Nodcry, and he's like kind of like partnered up with Flynn's for like the lighthouse keeper type of thing. I haven't gotten to the story yet, but I'm like spoiling myself with a bunch of screenshots that I've seen on Twitter as well as on Instagrams and like on friends' stories. So I just like him. I like him a lot. I like him with Flynn's. I think their dynamic is very cute. But I like Ilua's like model in general. So I do plan to draw him very, very soon. And if I can decide, I don't know if anyone's going to get this far into the video to even let me know, but if you want that to be like the start to finish video, or you want it to be like a chattier video, let me know. And I'll think about it, because I would love to just doodle and sketch out both Flynn's and Ilua together, just in general. I know a lot of people are not into like shipping. I personally am not really a type of person who ships people typically, but I do consume that kind of stuff, especially if it's paired up with good art, so I don't really mind it. But before I get too sidetracked, what did I have planned for the spread? So I didn't really talk about the outfit too much, other than my thoughts about having the difference between, I guess, like J-idol, K-pop idol aesthetics and stuff, and, you know, inspiration for general aesthetic for the idol versions AU of like Genshin and Honkai Star Rail characters that I typically do. But for Dan Heng specifically, and Permancer Terre kind of aesthetic as well, I try my best to follow very similar kind of flow and shape of their outfit. So in this case, for Dan Heng's kind of like half jacket type of thing that he has going on the right hand side, I wanted to make sure that's going to follow the same kind of the way how it kind of like drapes across. I also want it to be like a lighter colored fabric potentially. I wanted to include that green dragon portion that's on his lapel to be as more of like a pin or a badge rather, instead of like being on top of where his pauldron is and like where it kind of covers up a majority of the right side of his chest. So I do try my best to keep certain details still intact to make sure that the character still looks like themselves. So I ended up also keeping, I think I'm going to add it as like a gray kind of like braided cord or chain that drapes on the left hand side, similar to how he has like those two pieces of fabric that tie together. I wanted to make sure I had fabric near his waist that kind of represents like where he has his belt and that extra green kind of turquoise-ish color that's near his waist. So I'm just trying to make sure things are a little bit consistent with just the general aesthetic, because if I can, I would like to tailor it to each character if I ever put them into like more of an idol AU, unless I want to go like full on different kind of aesthetic. I don't know. There just are some things I do like to keep it somewhat consistent, even if it's like small things. So when I made matching outfits for Breeze or like the Animal Boys, there's like some consistency, and then some accessories. I made it similar to the accessories that they have in their original outfit, but I still wanted a consistent look among the 6 of them without making it too like one person stands out. While the ones that I did for Aggravate, I still tried my best to keep it very similar to how their fabric was laid out on their body, but it was definitely a very different aesthetic. So each of them, it kind of changed. There's less consistency among the 4 of them, I guess. And Aggravate, it's like Alhaitham, Kaveh, Tineri, and Sino. So yeah, I tried my best to make sure that their aesthetic was kind of represented in a certain way. And I was very much like debating between like Sino having a hat or not, and it looked correct with a hat and looked correct without a hat. So, you know, a bit of a struggle there for me. But let's talk a little bit more about the art again. So other than me fiddling around and trying to figure out his outfit, which, like I said, later on in this week, I will be showing you guys a little bit more of that process, because I did want to somewhat solidify his entire outfit at some point if I want to do some sort of sketch page and in full color, hopefully. So in this case, when I was doing the first little cover-up page, that's when I was really planning out his outfit. The second kind of little page that I ended up doing for the cover-up also was kind of like planning for it. And then this whole kind of like just pencil spread of Dan Heng PT Idol AU is kind of me just playing around and hopefully just piggybacking off of the design that I had earlier and hopefully making it work. And later on, I will make like a few adjustments, probably even to the one that I will do later this week, because there's some things I think I need to fix with the color distribution, or I want to add more accessories in a way. But the main reason I'm ending kind of this session off with just like a spread of graphite drawing is because graphite is always going to be my #1 favorite thing to use for sketching and doodling and drawing. So we have our left-hand side with like a larger Dan Heng kind of like waving. He's holding his little in-ear mic. And then in the center, we have one that sees kind of like looking back. I wanted to try to do another profile. Yeah, the profile view is a little bit kind of funky looking. I end up doing another one, not on camera, but like literally on the spread after this one to do another profile. I definitely think it was a better attempt at a profile. I just don't know if it really looks like him too much. I'm probably going to do a few more spreads of him in my sketchbook. Granted, I think at this point, I probably miscounted the last time I did a sketchbook video. So I think now I have like 8 spreads left. Or 9 spreads left. I'm not too sure. We're really getting close to the end of the sketchbook, which is exciting. I really want to hopefully squeeze in maybe 1 or 2 more gouache painting sessions, as well as just like spreads in the sketchbook before we hit the end, because one gripe I already have about the sketchbook, not like physically about the sketchbook, but the very first page or like the intro inside cover portion of what I did, I didn't really like how I painted my OC Selwyn, so hopefully by the time we get to the very end of the sketchbook, I will be able to do something that I actually like. Yeah, but enough of that. So let me talk about what we're going to be doing now to kind of like finish off this spread. I got like pastel water-based markers, I think just after Christmas. Basically, whenever like any of my family members make me order something online and I'm paying for it anyways, I sometimes do add like an extra thing for myself. So I saw this 50 set of like pastel water-based markers. They kind of look like the Magic Fly ones that I typically use, but this one is literally like a pastel set. So there's not really any dark colors in this one. And usually when I'm doodling and sketching with markers and using somewhat of like a dark ink, I do like using pastel markers to have that higher contrast, and it's just a little bit easier to work with colors that are pastel, because matching the colors together, majority of pastel colors look great with one another, so it's hard to kind of like screw that up. So for me at least, we're just gonna add a little bit of color to the spread. There's just too many areas that I found were a little bit too sparse and a little bit awkward. So I'm just filling in certain spaces with kind of like rectangles of color behind each of the characters. Then in this little awkward corner up here, I'm gonna put his name. I could have fit maybe an extra doodle, but I feel like I would be forcing kind of like myself to fill the space. So instead I'm just gonna put text, and then to fill at the bottom, just one more long rectangle to kind of outline just the very bottom portion, just to even it out a little bit. And I think that's it. So here we have our little overview of our sketches. So apologies if you get this far. I know whenever I do voiceovers especially, I'm very yappy and chatty, so this one's definitely not an exception to that. But once again, I mentioned that pencil is going to be always my favorite to sketch, so I'm excited to hopefully also do a few more pencil sketches in the sketchbook while we are still in it, because I love this paper. It's super smooth, it's very thick, so it's like very easy for me to work on. But I think out of all the sketches that I ended up doing today, all of them turned out pretty nice. I kind of like just doodling and sketching, so you know, having somebody to doodle and sketch for the rest of the sketchbook is just kind of nice to have. So Dan Heng is definitely going to be fueling me probably till the end. I definitely also drew Selwyn a lot in general as well for this entire sketchbook, so both of these two characters probably will be the majority. Also, I'm taking time to also label the bottom portion of my pages so that we have some sort of date so I can refer to them in the future. That's like something I always want to get better at, is just dating my art so that I can reference them to whatever time period that was in this case. Also, whenever I'm going to be moving along in my sketchbook and I do graphite work or anything that might smudge, I always try my best to stick in sticker paper, sticker backing paper, any scrap paper in between to work, so that once we work on the back side of those spreads, hopefully it will just imprint onto the scrap paper rather than onto each other. And as long as the paper doesn't move, it shouldn't be really smudging the drawings either. But I think that's it for today's video. Thanks for hanging out with me, guys, and I'll talk to you guys next time in the next video. Bye!